Hey, everybody. Welcome to our latest installment of MSP Business School. With me today, we've got our special guest, James Kernan of Kernan Consulting. How you doing today, James?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you, Brian?
Fantastic. Thank you. And with us also, of course, are the dynamic duo, my great co-hosts, Rob Rogers and Tim McNeil. How you guys doing this afternoon?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I hope I'm Batman in that one.
He's sticking you with the Robin position, Tim.
No
He's always good like that. Well, we got to kick off this one with first a very special thanks to James. Due to technical difficulty, which I'll take ownership of it, James is actually recording for the second time with us. Unfortunately, you guys will only get to hear this one. So anyway, James, really appreciate you coming back with us today.
Yeah, you bet. Hopefully we're going to nail this one. So
I'm confident.
We'll get this one.
Ready to go. Yep.
I'm confident. We went back to the tools I know how to use. I'm a one-trick pony, so here we sit. But really thank you for joining us today. And as we've discussed in the past, what we really want to do is learn a little bit more about your organization, how you help the MSP community today. Certainly know you've been a pillar within the community for a long period of time now, really helping people grow and accelerate their businesses. So we kind of want to understand a little bit more about your approach and about you and what you do. And then, we'll kind of move into some other areas of conversation, I'm sure, as we get moving.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Terrific. So, kind of tell us a little bit about Kernan Consulting and tell us what you're up to today.
So Kernan Consulting, we're an international management consulting firm. I really focus on revenue generation and business growth programs for the small to mid-size technology solution provider or MSP. So we've been around for about 15 years and been doing this a long time. And what makes my heart tick is, in the olden days, it was closing that big deal, right? We're winning that big recruit. But today it's helping turn someone's business around or putting together a strategic plan and helping them get up to the next level. So I do that really three different ways. I do one-on-one coaching with about half a dozen individuals all around North America at a time. So I don't take on too many projects because I'm working with them one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So one-on-one coaching and consulting. I also run the Millionaire Mastermind Peer Group program. So we've got members all around North America, and that's a growth-minded peer group that's focused on sales and marketing. And then also have training programs that will bring people through as well. So that's how I deliver it, and that's kind of where I'm at today.
So let's take kind of a moment and talk a little bit about kind of your approach in the one-on-one scenario. Knowing you keep it tight net, do you kind of really embed yourself into these customers' business in a respect, and kind of what how do you hold a position within that?
Yeah, so great question. So really the approach with both the mastermind community and the one-on-one community, I take a similar approach, but there's I go a lot deeper on the one-on-one standpoint. So normally I'll start off an engagement with an assessment. I'll do a deep dive in the business, and it's really, we break it down into 10 different areas, everything from finance to leadership to management, sales, marketing, and so on. But we'll do a deep dive assessment. Typically takes me a week to 2 weeks. Normally I would go on site, but over the past year plus, we've been doing these remote. But it gives me everything I need. Then it populates this scorecard for me. So I'll give a deliverable back to the business owner or their leadership team, about a 20-page plus document. And it's really the foundation of our business growth plan with a series of recommendations and suggestions. So that typically starts an engagement. And then I'll work with the leadership team, based on how fast they want to go, but I'll either meet with them once, twice, or 4 times a month to implement what plan we came up with together.
And in terms of those plans, James, are they really focused on the entire business? So is it looking at business development, service delivery, customer success, that whole thing there? Or are you really focusing in on the numbers?
Well, the reality is it's a big picture approach. And what most people don't realize, I've been very fortunate and blessed in my career, but I've been around some explosive growth companies. that we grew like gangbusters, and I learned a lot in those scenarios, but I also learned how to control your growth and manage your growth. And it's a lot more fun when you're growing in a controlled rate and you're making lots of money. But you've got to have the right people in place, the right processes in place, and the right tools in place. So to me, growing the business is the easy part, but normally that's what most of my engagements start with. But on the sales and marketing plan, we come up with the goals and the plans, and we start implementing that. But as you guys know, from a business standpoint, everything changes as you start bringing on more customers. You know, you've got all sorts of challenges. You got to recruit more people. A couple people start quitting because they're getting busier and you're holding them accountable. I'm not being compensated properly, and your culture changes, and it can be stressful when you grow. And so I look at things from a big picture standpoint, and I'm addressing all of these things as they come up. And in many cases, we prepare for that, you know, prepare your culture for that growth mindset, which is very different than a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, there's the old saying, right? You know, most companies fail when they're at that point of trying to scale, right? And if you've never gone through that scale out process, it can be daunting for all the reasons that you listed there. You know, it's a different animal than getting started, and of course, solving the problems for the customer.
Yeah. When does a client come to you, James? So what is your best case scenario that you typically see when they're like, okay, I'm done, I can't figure this out on my own? What's that line for you?
Well, that's a interesting point, Rob, because most of us, you know, are very strong-willed, and we feel like we know what we're doing. So it takes some kind of moment in time for them to come to that realization. You know, last year, some came because of COVID, and they didn't realize how to pivot and change what they're doing, and they stopped marketing because they got afraid. And that was the worst thing that anybody could do during the pandemic, is stop marketing themselves. So normally they have some compelling event in the business. They're getting ready to buy another business. They're merging with someone else. Their top salesperson just left and stole all their accounts and some people, and the owner doesn't know what to do. Or they're getting ready to build out sales and marketing, and they want to do this seriously, and they've never hired salespeople before. So normally it's some kind of compelling event in the business.
And you had mentioned, you said a couple buzzwords like scorecard specifically, and a couple other things. Do you use the EOS model when you go into these companies and try and implement that?
Exactly. And again, I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been at this for almost 30 years. So the first half of my career, I was running MSPs and growing and buying and selling. And then after I sold my last business, you know, I realized how to do it. And we didn't call it EOS at the time because I think EOS wasn't out at that time, but it's a very similar process. And now I've kind of incorporated some of the terminology just because it's so well known. But
yeah,
I'm an EOS implementer, finance major in college. So I was a numbers guy right out of the get-go. And to me, that was the secret of, if you hire the right people and you make your numbers transparent, that's that culture that I always wanted to have everybody see how everybody else is doing every single day in that peer pressure. I wanted that friendly peer pressure. So yeah, we very much use the EOS philosophy.
Yeah.
So, you talk a little bit about the longevity of doing this piece as a consultant, right? And when you think about 15 years ago, how technology's changed and adapted. So, how do you kind of keep customers moving so they don't get too stale, get too stuck in one spot and not move with the changing tides of technology? I mean, just looking at today, right? We're a totally different breed than we were 10 years ago. I always joke about the fact that the early 2000s, all I did was sell exchange servers and manage them. That's all I needed to do to make a living, right? I'd be in the poorhouse today. So talk a little bit about how you kind of bring your customers through those arcs too, and then help those customers. You mentioned, stepping in there when there's a turnaround that needs to happen. How do you approach those types of more challenging engagements?
So one of the things I pride myself on is I'm a resource for my customers and my prospects. So you've got to stay connected to multiple different communities and other coaches and other consultants. And I'm very active in that regard. I'm normally on the road quite a bit. But I feel like I learn just as much as I give back, and the more you learn, the more valuable you can be. But basically, it's that first engage. When I start an engagement with, normally it's a 1 day on site. You really get to know the business owner, and most of the time, the walls come down fairly quick, and people will be transparent, and they'll share, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I don't know if it's anything special that I do or I ask, but I feel like I'm a trustworthy person. People can share what's really going on. And we get to the root ball cause of what they're doing in the business. And normally, people are just wasting their money if they hire expensive consultants and they don't implement what they tell them to do. So, I take that seriously, and I pick, who I want to work with just as much as they pick me. So, but normally it's when we make recommendations, things move pretty seamlessly. I can think of maybe 1 or 2 examples when that it didn't happen that way, and then we kind of felt like we went in a big circle. And I said, hey, you're not really implementing what plan we came up with 90 days ago. I feel like we're wasting our time. Doesn't seem like you really want to grow the business. And that was the reality. He said, yeah, you're right. I want to kind of keep it where it's at, and I don't have to work any harder. It's like, okay, well, at least now we know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and you just hit upon one, I think, the biggest challenges consultants have, right? As much as we talk about it in the MSP space, it's when do you know when to fire a client, right? When do you know that the client's really not engaged? There's an ethics that goes with that too, right, James? So to be that trustworthy guy, you also got to be willing to say to these guys, I'm not bringing you value anymore.
right.
You're not engaging on it. So happy to be here as a sounding board, but really, is that doing you what you need? And it's a challenge. So, with that being said, maybe we can transition a little bit into, what is one of the catalyst events that you had that really brought you to where you are today? What made you decide this is the route you want to go, and what's something that, good or bad, really contributed to the success that you're now feeling today?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I can really think of. Number one is, I'll just call it perseverance. When I left this big 6-figure job, I was part owner in a privately held company, but we're a big organization, over 300 million. I think I had 18 profit centers reporting in underneath me, and I got worn out, and I felt like I wasn't respected. There was an ownership team of 4 of us, and even though we were doing really well, it just wasn't fulfilling for me anymore. And so I quit and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing. And, guess what year that was? This was 2001. What?
I was going to say it either had to be 2001 or 2008, right?
Yeah. There aren't too many other options. Yeah.
This is business school. I get an F in timing. So
that's when I started mine too, James. So don't feel bad.
It was right at the very beginning of 2001. And we all know how that panned out, but I ended up buying a small consulting practice in San Diego that spring. And then, the economy really flattened out. I think by late that summer, my father got diagnosed with cancer. And then 9/11 happened, and business just stopped. So, even though I bought this company, I didn't put myself on payroll for over 6 months. And we lost, I think we lost over $80,000 that first year. But I knew I just needed to keep doing what I was doing, keep marketing the business, and we would get our lucky break. And fortunately, right after that, the very beginning of 2002, we won 2 really big contracts, a big staffing contract with the federal government. And then the San Diego Padres ballpark, they selected my firm to do all the cabling and network infrastructure.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And that went in. And so
very cool.
We had 8 people. So nobody really even knew who we were. But that just catapulted our growth. And that was just a tough lesson on perseverance. And I was really confident. I knew what we just needed to do. I just needed to fight through the things we couldn't control. So that was probably the biggest one. And then the other quick story was when I, sold the business in 2006. I went and spoke at a Robin Robbins conference about how to, here are the 10 things I did to grow my business and sell it. And I was shocked at how interested people were to learn about that. So that's when I put the program together called the 36-month millionaire program, and Robin marketed that exclusively to her community. And that really put me in a position to go out and do what I love to do, and it's help people grow their business.
Oh, that's awesome. And, you can't say enough about perseverance, right? All of us on this call really kind of hold the sales role within our organizations. And
Yep.
it's amazing, you can have that day that you feel incredibly down. And if you just pick up that phone, make one more call or send that one more email, it's amazing how it can change sometimes on a dime, right?
Yep.
And, but there's a lot of people that don't take that step and let the game beat them, right? So, that's why they need folks like yourself to kind of help prop them up and let them know what they got to do. Now, I'd like to dive in for a moment, if you don't mind, kind of on that, on your 36-month millionaire program. So this is really, it sounds to me, is this a program, and based on what you were sharing there, where if I'm a guy who knows that I want to have an exit and I'm starting to prepare for that exit, I really want to start looking at that program and the tenants inside there to say, how do I pretty this thing up so I can maximize it coming out? Is that kind of what it's working on?
Exactly. And it kind of was, from startup to scaling your business to the exit, and, your plan should start with the end in mind. So that was the beginning of that program. And that's that 10-step framework that I still worked at. And then we've kind of morphed it in with a lot of the EOS, terminology and philosophy as well. But that's exactly what it is. And
is that just a component of your masterminds at this point, or is that still a standalone?
It's basically the framework. Any coaching client that I work with, we do, and then I use some of that framework inside the mastermind community. We have exercises that we take our members through on a quarterly basis, and there's 2 of them that are required before you're onboarded and allowed to start participating in the community. So it's very similar exercises, but it's the same philosophy for sure.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's something that, I hear often. I was talking to an M&A specialist and, recently, and, he was saying one of the biggest challenges is a lot of times when people come to them wanting the exit, they want the exit immediately, and they haven't done the steps they need to maximize that exit, right? And there's an art form to that. And if you haven't gone through it, you don't know it, right? You've had to go through an M&A on both sides probably and feel a couple scars in order to really understand what that's all about. So
exactly. I did several keynotes in the past 18 months, and what came to me was exactly what you were talking about there, Brian, is everybody wants to sell their business now, but they should have been preparing for this a year or 2 before. And there was a book I read probably 2 years ago. It was called Built to Sell. Yeah. And it was a great book, but it gave me, some helpful hints, and I, put together some great speaking points to help people, grow their business and prepare now. So when it does come down the line, here's what you need to do, and you're going to get a lot more money for it. So that was that program in itself is what we call the value builder, and that's very similar to that framework, that the 10-step framework I was talking about that I implement. But this one is specifically really built around almost a formula, the valuation formula of what you need to do, more numbers based. But I'd gone through some engagements like that and some training there. But that, if you haven't read that book, I'd encourage you to check it out, because it's spot on, I think.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So James, I know that as an events guy, as you mentioned earlier, and certainly as a guy that holds events, the last year has been a unique one for you. But I believe you've got a couple events coming up soon. Would you like to share a little bit about the detail and how people can get involved there before we head into the speed round?
Yeah, you bet. So some of the fun things that I get to do is we sponsor and host events in fun cities all around the United States, and typically they're quarterly events. So it's the last Thursday and Friday of each quarter. Finally, we're trying to get back out on the road. This one is going to be virtual here Q1, but we're finally opening things back up to bring in guests and so forth. All of last year, Brian, it was just members only for my event. So it's going to be fun to invite outside speakers and experts. We're going to do a virtual happy hour, Uber Eats gift cards for the paying attendees. So we're going to do some fun dynamic things, but it's just go to the Kernan Consulting website. You can find information about our event up there, but it's March 25th and 26th. It'll be a 2-day online event, but we've got a really exciting lineup and encourage people to attend.
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit. I was supposed to be one of the attendees at James's event last year in Omaha, which coincides with the College World Series. And of course, COVID hit them. So, it'll be about a year before I finally get to meet you in person.
But we do have Omaha lined up for Q2. So
saw that.
Nice.
We've got that. And then I think we've got San Diego on the calendar for Q3 and then Dallas for Q4.
Awesome.
So, it'll be fun.
Definitely looking forward to those events, and it's going to be great to see, all the people we haven't gotten to see in about a year, except this way.
Right.
So Tim, you want to take us into the speed round?
Yeah. So we'll do it again, right?
Yeah.
So just probably the same 5 questions. First one is talk, text, or Teams.
Talk, text, or Teams. I think I'm a talker.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Music, movies, or TV.
Music, movie, or TV? Music.
Okay, that's definitely the most common. What age do you want to retire?
Never retiring. I'm having too much fun.
Yeah. Mac or Windows?
Windows.
Okay. If you could do anything outside of tech, what would it be?
Would be a football coach.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you. What's the helmet behind you?
It's actually just this past year, behind my head up on the shelf there, I was elected into my college Hall of Fame for football. So
very cool.
4 years of football at Nebraska.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big part of my life, and I still coach youth football today, but I don't get paid for it. So I'd love to coach.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and as always, we got the usual response we hear, which is this is an industry of people that never want to stop working. I love it.
I mean,
that is definitely the most
right?
popular answer.
Yeah, entrepreneur. That bug that always drives you. You know.
Yeah.
Board sitting home.
Yeah, James, I really appreciate you joining us here today. For anyone that's looking to get a hold of James, we will be including his LinkedIn profile with the podcast. Also, this episode will be on MSPBusinessSchool.com and anywhere that you get your podcast, to include YouTube. So head on over to YouTube, click like, subscribe, and check us out. James, are you any closing thoughts before we break away today?
Just words of encouragement. Don't let the world get you down. Stay positive and stay connected to communities where you're going to learn and stay encouraged, and keep marketing yourself. Last thing in the world you want to do is not over communicate to your customers and your prospects. They need to know you're open. They need to know what you're doing, and that you're going above and beyond to help people in your community. So keep marketing yourself and you're going to be fine.
Okay.
Awesome.
As always,
Very cool.
Thanks very much, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks again, James.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, everybody. It's good to be with you.